All right. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon if you're joining from across the pond. Lovely to see you all, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the very first Supply Chain Sustainability School session of 2026. I hope everyone had a lovely holiday and a Happy New Year, and happy to see you back here at one of our webinars. So today we're going to be talking about developing a sustainability strategy. I don't know if this ties in with any of your maybe New Year's resolutions for your business, but today's going to be a great talk. This session is going to be about an hour. I'll just go through a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. First and foremost, if you haven't been on one of our webinars before, my name is Wendy Carradine. I'm the operations manager for the US Supply Chain Sustainability School. If you do ever have any questions or need support, please do reach out to me. My email will be shared with all of the information from today's session after this webinar. If you all just want to reach out and say hi, would love to have a chat. Like I said, this session is being recorded. The slides and the recording will be shared with you after this webinar. I will share a couple of quick resources along with the recording and slides. So if you want to keep learning, that would be great. Anything else you need to know? You'll be sent a certificate of completion just to prove that you were here and that you've earned your CE credits. That will populate automatically in your dashboard. If you do have any issues with that, please let me know. Other than that, I think we are good to go. So today we have Hattie Webb joining us from London. She's going to be delivering today's session, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and say a little bit more about her. So take it away, Hattie.
Great. Thanks so much, Wendy, and thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Thanks for having me join your session today from London. And as you can see in the next sort of just under an hour, I don't have loads of slides for the session. So we're going to ease in gently to the new year. It'll probably end up being about 45 minutes. And we'll see, we might have some time for questions and things like that as well. But yes, the session is all about developing a sustainability strategy. And this is perfect if you are fairly new to this topic. You're interested in doing a bit more with regards to sustainability in your organization. I'm going to go through really step by step on how to develop and also deliver a sustainability strategy. So what you do once you've got your strategy, ensuring that it doesn't just sort of sit there and collect digital dust, that you're actually implementing it as you go forward and achieving those goals that you want to achieve with regards to sustainability. Please do use the chat if you do have any questions. Wendy just messaged on there. Yeah, please do say hi. Let us know where you're joining from. Yeah, we're very open to questions. There's no sort of wrong questions here. This is your opportunity to learn and gain as much from this session as possible. A little bit about me. My background is in carbon and sustainability strategy. I now work at Action Sustainability and have done, I don't know why I say now because I've been there for nearly 3 years, been here for nearly 3 years, which essentially is the parent company of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, which covers UK, Ireland, US, and Australia as well. So I'll be bringing my background in carbon and net zero into everything that I'm talking about today with sustainability strategy, all the other areas of sustainability as well, which we also cover at Action Sustainability, looking at things such as social value and human rights and sustainable procurement as well. There is so much to sustainability. There's so many different topics. It can seem quite overwhelming and it can be hard to know where to start. So that is really what a strategy is all about. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. What are we going to be covering in terms of learning outcomes? I'm going to be going through what a sustainability strategy actually is. Sustainability is a term that is being bandied around much more nowadays. But what does it actually mean, especially with regards to putting it into a strategy? I'll talk more about the terminology, how to actually develop a sustainability strategy, and then how to deliver your strategy as well. And this will basically form the agenda of this session something that we call the strategy cycle. And these are really the steps that we recommend that you take yourself through in order to develop and deliver a strategy. So you can see that that top arrow there is all about developing, and then that bottom arrow there is all about delivering. So that developing side of things, we'll be looking at how you can undertake research, identify your drivers, and then actually go ahead and develop your strategy, then create an action plan, and then delivering. How do you monitor implementation? How do you measure your performance and understand whether you're actually meeting those commitments, goals, targets that you've set? And then how do you make sure that you're continually improving, especially that we live in a world that is constantly changing? How do we make sure that we are resilient to external shocks? And obviously, this is a cycle that is going round and round and round as we continually improve our strategy as the years go on as well. Before I go into a bit of an introduction into sustainability, I'm going to just get us set up on something called Mentimeter, which I'm going to be using throughout the session. The easiest way to join is to scan the QR code using your phone, or you can go to menti.com and enter the code that is on the screen there. And maybe we can put that information in the chat as well, so that you can easily access the info that you need. Great, I can see some of you have said hi. Thanks for messaging on the chat. We've got someone from Lebanon, someone from Boston, someone from the Netherlands. So real global group here, which is great. And just to say that the content that I'm going to go through is pretty broad. So actually, it should easily apply to wherever in the world you are joining from. Of course, different countries will have different legislative requirements, different nuances. So I can definitely point you in the right direction, or check out the school if you want to find out more specific information with regards to your country of origin or where you're operating, and what those sort of requirements within that country are as well. So hopefully you're getting set up on Menti. I can see there are some of you on there, which is great. First question is a pretty easy one to get us started. What size organization are you? And just to say that these are all anonymous as well. So, yeah, don't worry. There's no sort of right or wrong here. It's just to keep you engaged, have a break from just listening to me the whole time. Gives me the opportunity to ask you some questions as well. Okay, so most of us are coming from pretty large companies, 250 plus. We've got someone who is from a slightly smaller company as well, 50 to 150 employees. So that's great. And obviously, depending on whether you're a larger or a smaller company, there'll be different challenges to that as well, with regards to sort of resourcing, but also complexity. Some of you might be joining from companies that have quite complex structures, so that can add its own challenges in terms of, how do you have consistency across your organization, make sure that you're all doing the same thing, or sort of working towards the same goals. And the next question here, what do you understand with regards to a sustainability strategy? Sort of from, no knowledge, which is also absolutely fine. If you have no knowledge, you're in the right place, because this is very much an introductory session. But also you might have some knowledge on the three pillars, or doing some sort of risk analysis, or maybe you have experience doing a materiality review, or using a framework such as the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So have a think of where you would kind of put yourself, I guess, on this scale. Okay, so most of you have said that you understand the three pillars, which is great. That's a great place to start. And a couple of you have said that you know how to develop a strategy based on maybe a risk analysis, or you have experience with the materiality assessment. So that's great. No one's put they have no knowledge. So, we're all starting with a foundation of knowledge. But I thought I'd just go through the basics, as I said, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I appreciate we're all coming into this with different sort of backgrounds, levels of knowledge, that sort of thing. Um, so, as you saw from that Menti question, sustainability is often split into three themes or three pillars, they're sometimes called: the environment, society, and the economy. Sometimes these are also called the three Ps: people, planet, profit. And sometimes they're called triple bottom line from a sort of business perspective as well. So environmental considerations relate to our impact on nature, things like pollution, use of energy and carbon, emissions, use of materials and waste, water availability, biodiversity as well. Societal considerations concern sort of human elements like community, culture, equality, access to fair employment, training, health would also fall under this as well. And economic considerations are related to an organization's long-term financial sustainability. So topics such as ethical business practices, stakeholder relationships, governance and transparency. So this is all about generating wealth and economic stability without impacting the environment or those social elements as well in a negative way. So if you're not already aware, hopefully, you're starting to see here how broad a topic sustainability is. I think often when we say sustainability, people's mind jumps straight to maybe the carbon or environmental side of things, but this is hugely broad, and all three of these different categories or pillars are dependent on each other and equally important to consider. So when we're developing our strategy and our plans, it's important to think about how best to balance these considerations, meeting that sustainable sweet spot in the center, as you can see there. And there are various frameworks that we can use to help us do this. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is one of those. So these are 17 interlinked goals intended to be achieved by 2030. And you can see they cover a broad range of sustainability issues. And this can be applicable to any organization of any size. So they are typically used as a framework for organizations to structure their sustainability strategy. And that's because all of these goals cover those three pillars that I just went through. They're universally recognized and they're quite easily understood. So it's a good way to almost just sense check that your strategy is covering a broad range of different categories within sustainability as well. And just to cover a bit of the sort of why, hopefully now you understand a bit better what sustainability is with regards to those three pillars, but actually, what are the benefits for an organization or a business for prioritizing sustainability? Well, you can see there's a whole range of different benefits here, right from, saving costs to improving organizational ethics, to being compliant as well. We're seeing more and more legislation coming out of sustainability, but also just sort of client drivers, especially if you're operating from a global perspective as well. It's really driving the need for organizations to implement a sustainability strategy. It just also helps more internally improve those efficiencies, save time, also attract and retain talent and skills. Research is showing that especially younger employees are more loyal to employers that show that they care about their impact on the world, on the environment, on society as well. So there are whole different benefits. And actually, these will very much relate to your drivers from an organizational perspective on why you are prioritizing sustainability. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Just honing in a little bit more on the detail here of actually what a strategy is and how it compares to a policy, for example, a sustainability policy. Because when we refer to a sustainability strategy, we're really talking about a document that outlines your organization's plan of action to achieve your sustainability mission and objectives. So simply what that means is, what are your sustainability impacts and how are you managing them? So who's managing them? What's your time frame for managing them? And this is linking really also to making sure that your strategy is tailored to you and your organization, and what is relevant to your organization as well. So this is why a strategy has to be unique to your organization and also developed by your organization. It wouldn't be good practice to sort of copy and paste sustainability strategies across all organizations because it needs to be relevant to you, what your goals are, what your business structure is, what your operations are, that sort of thing. So that's what a sustainability strategy is, and by definition, I guess. But also some organizations might have other strategies that are sort of fall underneath that, such as a carbon strategy or a sustainable procurement strategy or social value framework. And these sort of tend to fit into that wider context of the sustainability strategy. And they might provide sort of more detail than what is in that overall strategy. So worth bearing in mind that actually you can dive into more detail. Sustainability strategy is more sort of that overarching strategy looking at those different sustainability topics. A few other words that is good to sort of be defined, to be aware of, starting with mission and vision. When we refer to an organization's vision, we're talking about where you want to be. So, what do you want to achieve? What is your end goal? So, for example, you might say that you want to be the most sustainable construction company. So, that would be your vision. Your mission is how to get to your vision. So, what do you need to do to achieve that? What objectives do you need in place to help you achieve that as well? So, a mission statement focuses on today and what the organization does to achieve it, whilst the vision statement focuses on tomorrow and what your organization wants to become. If we move on to sustainability policy, I will talk about this more in the next slide as well, but this is fundamentally what you're doing internally to achieve your sustainability goals and commitments. And then we've got goals and commitments. So a goal is the long-term outcome that you want to achieve. The commitments are sort of more what you're committing to that will help you achieve your goal. And then the final thing here really is targets and objectives, which are those short-term actions that will help you to achieve your goal. They're similar, but they're slightly different. A target is normally a bit more precise, so it might be quantifiable. So something like reduce water usage by 15% in 1 year. Objectives are more sort of actionable steps towards achieving the overall goal that you set. So it might be something like implement water saving technologies in all facilities. And you might notice, especially if you start reading sustainability reports or pages on websites, that sometimes different organizations use these words in a different way. All I'd say is just make sure that you're consistent internally so everyone knows what for you and your organization these terms mean and how you're using them so that everybody is communicating in the same way. Otherwise, it could start to get a little bit confusing. And this is the same for really understanding what the difference is between a strategy and a policy. As I said, your strategy is the overall framework that you have. So it includes that vision, mission, any goals that you've got, objectives and targets as well. It's also your plan of action for delivering all of those things. And the strategy is long term. So typically we see organizations that have strategies to 2030, maybe even 2040. And it's very much dealing with those external factors as well. So what are your sustainability impacts and how do you manage them? Whereas the policy sits more within the strategy. It's your principles of action, it's the set of rules for rational decision making, and it's the breakdown of what you're committing to within your strategy and how you'll go about achieving that. So, whilst you might see examples of policies externally, people often or organizations often put them on their website. It's actually an internal process. So, it's what you're committing to internally or doing on a day to day basis. And sort of those principles of actions, as I said earlier. So that is the difference really between a strategy and a policy. And again, it can be quite useful just to really identify those differences so that you can, work towards those things individually rather than getting, potentially confused with what the difference is and that sort of thing. So we're going to be focusing on the strategy cycle, putting together your sustainability strategy. So first of all, we recommend that you do some research so you understand um, how sustainability is sort of being worked on, achieved by competitors and clients in the market. There are many different ways you can do this, but one of the methods that we use to assess organizations is to do a benchmarking exercise. So we look to see if organizations have certain criteria. So, for example, do they have a sustainability strategy in place? Do they have a sustainability policy? Do they have targets and objectives? What sustainability topics are they looking at? Which are they reporting to on the most? And then, based on their maturity for each question, we then award points. And so, through this process, we can score each organization, which gives an overall score and allows a comparison to be made. So, the key here is really then to pull out best practice within the industry and then look for those opportunities to maybe even collaborate on different projects or on certain sustainability topics as well. So this very clearly gives you an overview of what is going on in the market and also how you compare to that. So you can essentially a gap analysis, you can see where your gaps are within sustainability, where, maybe other competitors and clients may be leading or maybe a bit further ahead than you. But equally, you can see where you might actually be already doing quite well. And actually, in certain areas, you might think, oh, well, you might realize we're ahead of our clients and competitors in that area. Great. That's maybe not something that we need to prioritize as much as other areas going forward. So it can be a really, really useful exercise. Once you've done that, we then recommend that you identify your drivers, your impacts, and your enablers. And our sort of supply chain sustainability school infographic here can be a really helpful way of visualizing this because on the left we have the drivers. So this is the why, what is driving you at an organizational level to be more sustainable. So for one organization, climate change, people might be the key drivers. For another, it might be customers or health and safety. It's different for each organization. So it's important to understand what your drivers are now, because that will lead on to who you need to engage with and what your priorities should be going forward. That middle section there is green. This is the what. These are different topics within sustainability. So this is working out what is relevant and applicable to your organization. For example, if you produce a lot of waste, you might want your strategy to be around the use of materials and waste or resource efficiency. And I guess the point here is that you really can't cover everything. So you need to decide what is most impactful, because again, every organization is different, and you can't cover everything. And these topics include all areas of sustainability within those three pillars I went through at the beginning. So not only the environmental side, but also the social, human side, human rights, diversity, things like that as well. And then on the right hand side, we have the enablers. So this is the how. What will help you to deliver your strategy? What do you need? And we'll come back to that in a bit. But actually, just going back to Menti, hopefully you still sort of just have it up there on your phone, and just have a go at sort of selecting what you think just off the top of your head. Again, there's no right or wrong here, it's anonymous, but what do you think are the key drivers for your organization at the moment for working on sustainability? Or, why did you join this session today? What is driving your organization? Just feel free to select. And it's always interesting to see what sort of comes up as the highest on here. There tend to be some themes, but I'm always intrigued to see what people end up selecting as their top drivers for sustainability at the moment. Great. We've got some responses coming in. Can see them being sort of averaged out based on what everybody is saying. Customer and client, probably unsurprisingly, always comes up as a top one whenever I do this exercise. Um, Employees and talent, interestingly, is coming up quite high as well. That's not always the case, actually, but interesting to see that that is a key driver for some of you. Competition as well. Um, as I just spoke about, conducting that research, understanding what your competitors are doing, can be really interesting, and obviously making sure that you're not falling behind in comparison to your competitors when it comes to sustainability. So that can be a very key driver. Yeah, legal compliance, as I just saw on the chat, is one of the lower ones, or is the lowest one at the moment, which is interesting. Amanda said it is for you. Obviously, this is just an average of what you're all selecting. But obviously, this will be different for different organizations. For some, you might not fall within the requirements of having much sort of legal obligation to be working on sustainability at the moment. So for you, especially if you're maybe a smaller organization, although a lot of you seem like you are larger from that poll at the beginning, it might be more that employees and talent is what is driving you, or stakeholders or competition. So work out what your unique drivers are, because that will also really help you to communicate to your stakeholders why you're doing this in the first place. Because the reality is, a lot of people will be very busy, they will be focusing on their day job. In a lot of organizations still at the moment, they don't have dedicated sustainability people in their company. So, people will be asking, what's in it for me? Why are we working on this? What's the point? So it's really important that you know what is driving you. And you can say, actually, we've done some research, and we've worked out that we need to be doing this because customers and clients are asking for it, or whatever your key drivers might be. And a way that you can actually do this, and work out what your drivers are, is sort of undertaking a bit of a driver's exercise, which is similar to what you just did on Menti, to be honest, but just a little bit expanded. On this list, I think there's a couple more drivers. We also have supplier commitment, innovation, and economic value creation, as well. And we do this just as part of a workshop with our clients. So we sit down, we go through this as an exercise, and we say, what is your top drivers? What are your top drivers both now and in the future? And then we rank every driver on a scale, as you can see, from 1 to 10. So that inner light blue line, that's an example of an organization's response. You can see that customers, competitive advantage, and supply chain security are their key drivers. And then that purple line on the outside is their future drivers. So predicting from a future perspective, what will their drivers be? Do they think that it's going to change? And in this example, yes, it has. Their future drivers are leadership, organization ethics, and innovation, for the future. And then you can use this to really shape your strategy long term. Because strategies, as I said, can go up to sort of 2040, maybe even 2050. So how can we improve ethics, for example, going forward? How can we include this in our strategy? So overall, what is driving us, from an organizational perspective? And I guess you can also go one step further than this, and you can complete a materiality assessment, or what we call a double materiality assessment, which can help you really prioritize your impact, risks, and opportunities. looking at what your stakeholders are saying, so how important different sustainability topics are to your stakeholders, but also how impactful it's going to be to your organization as well. And so you can imagine if you start plotting those sustainability topics on the right hand side on a graph like this, you can really quickly identify those ones in that top right hand corner of the graph and work out, okay, these should be our priorities. These are the most material sustainability topics for us at the moment. And then that will feed into your strategy. So let's say, climate, waste, and uh, materials is coming up as the top three priorities in the right hand corner. Those are the things that are most important to stakeholders, and those are the things that are going to be most impactful to your organization. Then maybe those will be the top three topics that will feed into your strategy. And then finally, enablers. And again, this will be different to each organization, but working out what do you need. It might be procurement, it might be other strategies. Think about what you need and what you need to make a start as well, because that will help you in the long term as well. And I recommend that you refrain from setting targets before having an idea of how you're actually going to achieve it, or at the very least, what you need to achieve it. And just to say, I appreciate I'm whizzing through some of these things quite quickly, but there is more content available and resources available on the school as well, particularly around sort of heat mapping, risk assessments, double materiality. If you want more information on that, then do get in touch. The next step is all about then actually developing your strategy with key goals and commitments. So setting those overall goals that you want to achieve. And this is just an example of the kind of goals that you could set. We will be a zero avoidable waste organization. We will enable colleagues to be the best they can be. We'll aspire to be a trusted partner. In terms of air quality, we'll leave a lasting positive impact. So these are very much those sort of overarching high level goals. So you'll go about setting those goals based on all of the research that you've just done, based on those key sustainability impacts that you've identified, that benchmarking research where you understood what your competitors and clients are doing, and based on your key drivers as well. You'll pull all those things together and you'll put together those overarching goals. And then that will enable you to create an action plan. So this is really about putting those goals into action, working out how you're actually going to achieve those things. And I'll take you through kind of each heading on this table step by step, because really this is the fundamental piece underneath your key targets and objectives, because you can have a lovely sustainability strategy with these amazing goals, but if you don't work out how you're actually going to manage and achieve them, then it could just be a bit pointless, to be honest. It could just be a pretty document that sort of just sits there and doesn't really do much. So this really is the how you're managing it piece of the puzzle, or step, if you like. So I'm going to go through these headings one by one. So the goal, I just mentioned that you'll have your overarching goal. For the purposes of this, using an example, I'll say, let's say we have a goal of reaching net zero by 2040. But obviously, you need to think about how you're going to get there. That's an ambitious target. How are you going to meet net zero? So then you'll break it down into tasks and subtasks. So a task might be working out how much carbon you produce. You can't manage what you don't measure, so you need to know your current performance, your current baseline. So understanding what carbon you're producing, what your emissions are. A subtask underneath that might be measuring your scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon emissions. You could have another subtask underneath that that's collecting information on fuel, expenses, working out who you need to engage for that, who's responsible, maybe understanding electricity, things like that. So working out what those various subtasks are underneath. And then set a priority. Is this urgent? Will it impact later tasks? For this example, I would say that it's pretty urgent or it's high priority because you can't do much else before you've measured your carbon. That's really the first step. So I'd say that this is a high priority. Resource required, working out who should be involved, what technology or software do you need. RACI, that stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So this is a way of just breaking down names against certain tasks. So accountable is someone who's overall held accountable for that goal. Responsible is the level below that, really. So this is the person that actually has to deliver that action. So they're the person that would go to the relevant people or the relevant teams to get the data that they need. Consulted and informed depends on the type of people that are involved or engaged. You might have a sustainability working group and you just need to inform them on what you're doing, keep them in the loop, tell them, those updates as and when. And then finally, you have the time scale. So this is very important, working out when this needs to be done by, saying, I'm going to collect a year's worth of baseline data for my carbon emissions to understand how much carbon I'm producing. And then, of course, you can think about ways to reduce this. So you can identify more tasks and subtasks as well. So you can start to hopefully see how you can break this down into those discrete, actionable steps to help it just seem a bit more manageable, and to help you work out how you're actually going to meet those goals that you've identified. There are some bullet points on the screen underneath as well. So internal requirements, working with customers, support from supply chain and performance management. These are also other things that I just recommend you think about when you're breaking down your action plan as well. I also recommend that you think about training and education. And this really links with that continual improvement piece of that strategy cycle, because again, you can have a fantastic strategy. It can look beautiful, but if you don't communicate it effectively internally, people don't know what you're doing and what part they can and should play. So this is very much about empowering people to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it. And within the school, you might have seen we offer different types of workshops depending on what stage you're at with regards to your sustainability strategy. You could run a workshop internally with your colleagues to understand where you're at now, where you want to be, what your priorities are. You might also want to run workshops with your clients, and we run this a lot at Action Sustainability on behalf of our clients. So we just get them in a room or a virtual room together, and we just say, what do you want to see from your supply chain? How can this organization support you to achieve your goals? You could also do awareness workshops with your supply chain. How do you let them know what you'll be needing from them? You can do this maybe after you've developed your strategy and say, look, this is what we're doing. Be aware that we'll be asking you for this, and how can we help you? How can we upskill you? And how can you support us on this journey? So very much about creating that partnership and helping to upskill your supply chain as well where you can. You might want to undertake something called a training needs analysis. So this is very much working out who needs to know what within your organization, because not everyone needs to know everything. And it's important that the right people know the right thing. So you might have HR or people department, maybe they're responsible for training. So it's really important that they understand what influence they can have on setting different types of training, because someone that works on machinery, they might not have the time to do like a 45-minute e-learning module. Maybe a 5-minute toolbox talk would be more applicable. So it's understanding what works best for different job roles, who needs to know what. And you can create a learning pathway in the supply chain sustainability school for your colleagues, so that you can work out and assign to sort of each individual person what e-learnings, what resources they should be looking at that's applicable to them, and also that's doable and realistic within their different, constraints or their different job roles and their time commitments as well. So let's look back at our strategy cycle and see what we've done. We've looked at the developing side of it. And now we're going to look a bit more at that delivering side of it, although we've already touched on the continually improving piece there, looking at sort of training and that sort of thing. And again, this is making sure that we deliver our strategy effectively. We make sure that we are managing, measuring performance, and we're monitoring as we go, and we're continually improving it as well. So I recommend that you follow a plan, do, check, act cycle. You might already be familiar with this. You might be using it in other areas of your organization. And there's no need to really reinvent the wheel for sustainability. If you're using something like this in other areas of your business, I recommend you use it for sustainability as well. Um, make sure that you're utilizing your existing business processes. I don't think there's any need to sort of redo everything. It's more a case of making sure that sustainability is a golden thread that weaves through everything that you're already doing within your organization. So let's take ourselves through this cycle. First of all, of course, we plan. We've gone through already on how to plan your strategy, who's responsible, how do you measure, how do you collect the data. Then you do the work, you collect the data, you make those carbon reductions or whatever it might be, and then you check. So this is understanding how you're performing, and don't wait until the end to do this. If you do wait until the end, that's technically just classed as reporting. I recommend that you go through month by month or maybe every 6 months, whatever is realistic for you, and understand how you're performing. And then measure or manage it appropriately then and there. So analyze the data and manage it. So that sort of feeds into act, the next step as well. How do you actually make changes based on that? And then we feed back round to plan. So how do we plan to make that change? So just figuring out how often you're going to analyze the data, doing it as often as possible, really. You don't want to wait until too far down the line, then it makes it trickier to maybe make those small changes as you go along. An example of this might be training. So even trying to get your colleagues or employees to go to training sessions, literally like the one you're at now. And you might think, okay, let's roll out some new training modules, let's engage with the right people. Maybe you organize external trainers, or maybe you organize the supply chain sustainability school to deliver a training session. Maybe you set employees the task of completing a set of learning by specific dates. And then a few months go by, and you check back to see how many people have completed the training. So don't wait until the end of the year, maybe after a couple of months. Okay, how many people have completed it? Maybe you see that not many people have completed the training yet. So then you think, okay, what am I going to do about that? You can send some email reminders. You can ask people, book in some conversations to see why they haven't joined the training, what's not working. And then at the end, you have more data and you can understand how many people have completed the training, maybe the end of the year. And also you can work out how much impact that has had, so what outcomes there are of that training. Maybe you can send a feedback form asking about workplace culture or understanding how people found the training in more detail. And then you can see how this made a difference, maybe compared to the previous year, how much training was done the previous year. And then you can think about, okay, maybe what do I need to change going forward to next year? How can I maybe communicate or promote the training in a different way? So just thinking, using training as an example and how you could take yourself through this cycle. And the last part I just wanted to mention with regards to that delivering piece and performance management is just some of the terminology. I think language is so important, and just making sure that we are consistent internally with the language that we're using. So just I'm going to go through these kind of different terms and performance management. So first of all, we obviously have a goal. I've mentioned that. Our overall aim or desired result. An example of this might be reduce the amount of waste being sent to landfill, resulting in environmental and cost benefits. We then have our target. So this is the specific aim that we're trying to achieve. So this might be 90% of waste diverted from landfill. We then have the indicator. So this indicates the progress made against the target. And we get the indicator through those metrics, through those measurements that can be used to track performance. So for this example, we need to know the total waste diverted from landfill and the total waste generated, and then that can give us a percentage um, total waste diverted from landfill. And then, of course, this will help you to understand how you're performing and how you need to improve as well. So, just making sure that we're all speaking the same language. When you're saying we need a metric for that, what indicator are we going to use? Everyone knows what you're talking about, and you can make sure that you're effectively managing your performance and you have the right data to understand whether you've actually met your goals or not. So don't forget when it comes to management that you need to determine your baseline, establish your reporting frequency. Is it going to be every month, every quarter, every 6 months? Explore tools and resources to help support you with the process as well. Make sure that you've defined your stakeholders and use that common language as well. So we're coming to the end of my slides here. Well done for sticking with me. I appreciate I've shared quite a lot of information, but just sort of reflecting on what I've covered. We've looked at what a sustainability strategy is, the different terminology associated with a sustainability strategy, how to develop that strategy to suit your business as well, and how to deliver that sustainability strategy, looking at continual improvement, measuring and managing performance and how to monitor that as you go along as well. So some key takeaways here. First of all, prioritize. Sustainability is huge. You saw just looking at those sustainable development goals at the beginning, there's so much we can be covering. So it's important that you work out what, from your organization's perspective, should you be prioritizing because you can't do everything, and why as well. Why should you be prioritizing those things? Develop your action plans, make sure you work out the how, that you don't just develop your strategy and leave it there. You actually work out how you're going to do it. So breaking your strategy into those sort of discrete actions and tasks. Measure your baseline, understand where you're starting from, what you're already doing. You'd be surprised the amount of organizations I talk to where actually internally they just don't really know what they're doing. And often organizations are already doing amazing things with regards to sustainability. They just don't have that structure in place or a way of reporting or shouting about it. So understand where you're at right now, and then sort of where you're aiming, where you're aiming from. You have that baseline. Train and educate, so important. People are much more likely to be on board, to get involved if they have that awareness. Knowledge is power. Often a lot of people don't get involved with sustainability because they feel like they don't understand it and they don't know how it relates to your organization. So training and education is so key. And of course, that's where the supply chain sustainability school comes in. So do make the most of all of the resources that are available to you on there. Do feel free to ask any questions, as we just said, on the chat as well. We'll be wrapping up soon, so if you do have any burning questions, now is your time to ask and to make the most of that. But as I said, do go check out those resources on the Supply Chain Sustainability School. We'll also be circulating a follow-up email as well with a link to a feedback form. So please do let us know how you found the session. It's always really useful to know how we can improve these webinars going forward. And we'll also be sending the slides around as well. I don't think we do have any questions on the chat at the moment. I don't think I can see the Q&A either. Or
Looks like
maybe
we don't
that's
have any
just
questions
me.
at the moment.
Great.
But yeah, just a reminder that if anyone does have any questions after the webinar, anything pops into your head afterwards and you're like, I didn't ask that question. You know what? I'm really curious about that. Please feel free to reach out to us and we'll be sure to get your question answered. So, oh, we do have a question actually. Elaine would like to know, in your experience, who should be involved in developing a strategy and the key decision makers? Should it be marketing, sales, operations, R&D? What do we
Yeah,
think?
really good question. Um, Probably the most annoying answer to give is that everyone or as many people as possible. Um, just because, and I'll talk more about that practically. But just because the more people that are involved in producing and developing the strategy, the more likely they are to then be involved in implementing it because they'll
Mhm.
feel invested because they sort of had their say in the development of it. Obviously, the reality of that is that that's tricky, and also you can't, you know, depending also on how big your organization is, you can't literally have everybody helping. So or everyone having their say. And the reality is you can't get everyone's ideas and as part of the strategy. So I'd recommend you have sort of different levels of involvement for people. Obviously, you're going to have one or two people that are sort of really leading the charge, and they're doing all of the sort of operations side of it and the organizational side of it. Maybe you have someone that already naturally lends itself to that role, whether they have a sustainability role or, um, you know, whatever makes most sense for your organization for that sort of key person. And then I'd have key senior people from marketing, sales, operations, commercial, innovation, R&D that maybe can be involved in sort of next tier of workshops. So when I talked about workshops to identify drivers, they'd be the kind of people that would be involved in those sort of workshops. And because obviously they're the spokespeople for the rest of their team, so they can bring those ideas forward.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then the next level, you might have sustainability champions or a sustainability team. Again, that when I said, keeping people informed, it might be that when you have your first draft of your sustainability strategy, those are the kind of people that you can present your first draft to and almost do like testing workshops. Like, what do you think about this first draft? Does this align
Mhm.
with your ideas? So yeah, identify maybe what those different levels are and work out who needs to be involved in what areas. But the short answer is as many people as possible. But of course, not everyone has the capacity to be involved or should, be involved to the same extent. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, thanks, Hattie. Interestingly, I didn't see procurement in that list, and procurement should absolutely also
Yeah,
be involved in that.
for
I know that
sure.
can be tricky
Yeah.
sometimes, that they can be standalone islands sometimes, so getting them involved is also very helpful. Great. Okay. If there aren't any more questions, I will leave it there. Like I said, please do keep an eye out for an email from myself with all of this follow-up information, the recording, the slides, everything you'll need to know to sort of take all of this learning forward. With all of that said, I just want to thank all of you for attending today's session. Thanks for taking time out of your first week back. I know we're all sort of shaking off the rust. So it's wonderful to see you all here. And my sincere thanks to Hattie. Great session. It's always great to hear you speak. Hattie is just so knowledgeable in this area. So really, really a treat to sort of start my week off with one of these sessions. So thank you very much, Hattie.
No worries. Thank you everybody for having me. And yeah, have a good rest of the week easing back into it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.